Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tech Talk Thursday. We have a very special guest with us this week, Chris Stone, video and audio producer, podcaster, and one half of the Dealcasters live show, will be joining us in a few moments. It's great to have Chris here with us, but first off, let's welcome Mr. McKenna. Hello, welcome back. Martin, how's it going?
Hello from sunny Edinburgh, where it's actually an ice warning tonight. So
an ice warning?
Not at all sunny, is it? An ice warning. So I'm looking forward to cranking the heating up and spending some time inside with a couple of glasses of wine a bit later on. Perhaps mulled wine at that. You know.
It's at that stage now where you have to keep
see
warm.
How that goes.
Exactly. Well,
yeah, I'm forced to drink mulled wine just to keep warm.
Forced. Absolutely. Well, that sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Keep us all warm. And we have Chris in the house. So, Chris, if you want to give us a thumbs up, if you're ready to join us, we're going to bring you on. And here we have Chris Stone. Oh, and he's disappeared. See, the camera did not work. Oh dear, where did Chris go?
So much for the impactful walk-on type of. Here's
there he is.
Wrong button, Neil.
Wrong camera.
We had the popcorn ready and everything, didn't we?
I'm going to do it again.
You know what?
I'm going to do it again. 1 second. Here we go.
Okay,
let's bring Chris back on.
It's not on loop.
There it is. Hurrah! All right. All right. See,
I tried to grab it, guys. I tried to grab it.
When you're not pressing the buttons, Chris, this is what happens, you see. We did say about testing the camera beforehand, but we wanted to keep it as a surprise, but never mind. Thanks for joining us so much today, Chris. There is a few questions for you already, and I don't know whether this is a tenuous question or not, but James Hicks in the house, thanks, James, for joining, says, will Michigan win the national championship again this year? I can't answer that question. I have no idea.
Question from James Hicks is going to be slightly tenuous and pointed. So thank you, James. And the answer is no. I made it clear to the hosts today that there would be no hard questions, but I did not make it clear to James. So that was the first hard question. We got that out of the way. So thanks for joining, Dr. Hicks.
Yes, thanks indeed, everybody, for joining. So, Chris, for those people who don't know you, which I can't believe nobody knows who you are, if you'd like to just let everybody know who you are, where do you come from, and what do you do, sir?
Wow, that is the hardest question. My name is Chris Stone. I'm at castahead.net, and we produce powerful podcasts for people that want a show but just don't want to learn how to do all of the stuff. We do that for them. They can come out of their trailer, fire up their microphone, fire up their camera, and we handle all the rest, from doing a guest to remote production, live, monitoring chats, and then repurposing content. And we sprinkle it all over the interwebs for, I guess, as long as Zuckerberg and Musk will allow that content to sit up there.
Great. And how long have you been running the Cast Ahead company then? When did you start that?
Let's see. I rolled out of Sony. I was with Sony Music for 28 years and decided I wanted to be a father and a husband. So I started a podcast company after I left Sony, and that was about 5 years ago, and had already begun doing podcasts, and most of them audio related, and started to get more into the video component of that about 4 or 5 years ago, and met wonderful people like yourselves, and at Ecamm and other places that kind of made it easy for you to develop your video presence on a podcast. So yeah, it's been about 5 years.
Great. So there's going to be no hard questions tonight, but there's going to be quite a few questions, and I think Martin is going to kick the story off for us, and Martin's got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
Relating to podcasts.
Well, we're going to start off with the easy one. How many podcasts did you do before doing video podcasts?
Oh, okay. Wow. That is an interesting question. I would say there was a few hundred that I had done that were primarily audio. And the crazy thing is, Martin, is that a lot of the recording, I would say 95% of the recording, was remotely. And so, we dial in whatever the format was. And I think back in the day it was Squadcast. And you would do the recording. And Zoom's another way that a lot of people will do podcasting. And you would do the recording, and you could see each other. Your cameras were on, you were looking at each other, and you were having this conversation, but it was just the audio that was being recorded, and it was just the audio that was then taken and put on the podcast host. And for whatever reason, I would just go to myself, why is this not being recorded for video on Squadcast? And so I just was dumbfounded that we weren't doing these shows and at least showing something and being able to take that content and turning it into something. If it was an hour-long interview, maybe we take out the best excerpt of it, put it up on YouTube. And it really wasn't being done for a lot of audio-only podcasters. And so I pushed it. And a lot of people were afraid of firing on, if not firing the camera because they were having this conversation. They just needed to be told that they were okay and it was good enough for video, and then they could get better. But for whatever reason, I think when people started firing up their video cameras, everybody would pucker up and I don't know if I have my makeup on. I don't feel like getting myself together. And I think, the pandemic taught us a number of things. And one of those is you don't necessarily have to be, glamorous every time you fire up the camera. Thank God that I don't have to be glamorous, because that would be, you would not see this at all. So I think that's one of the things that really sort of fueled that whole thing was like, listen, we can make doing video podcasting easy for you. All you have to do is just, show up, fire up your camera. And what I learned was that, this is not some Rubik's Cube. It's really you just have to be seen and heard clearly. And that sometimes means just putting fluffy stuff in your room and getting into doing a little sound treatment and just, buying an affordable mic that's dynamic that you can speak across the top of. And like some of these things, like a lot of people, we have the curse of knowledge, Martin, that, because we've been in doing these things for years, that we assume everybody else knows this stuff, and they don't. And that's what we learned when we went live on Amazon, is that we were getting some of the same questions every time, all related to mic technique, sound treatment. Why am I getting echoes in my room? Why do I need headphones when I get on a podcast? Not everybody knows that stuff. And the more we did it, and the more we did it in scale, the bigger the show was able to grow.
I think it's tricky, isn't it?
So
Go ahead, Martin. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Neil.
I was just going to say, I think it's really difficult for people who aren't familiar with audio or video techniques. They think, well, I'll just buy this camera, I'll just buy this mic, without really thinking about how they're going to use it. And then, as I've always said, you can have the best mic, the best camera in the world, but if your lighting is off, if your mic technique is off, if you don't know how to set the camera properly, you can have a really expensive looking setup look really trashy very quickly. So it's really important to take the time to learn the tools that you're using and make sure that what you're using is to the best of the ability and how you've set it up.
So yeah, this is the opportunity to jump in and say, at some point we need to segue to what gear people are using for their setup. And I think we've already given away before the show that we're all using the same microphone, but I'll let Chris tell us what that is. And I'm going to take a wild stab in the dark about the brand of camera that Chris might be using after 28 years of working for a company, but I could be wrong. What's your gear, Chris?
Well, it's funny. It starts with S, ends with Y, and in the middle is on, right? Well, even though I worked for Sony for years, it was Sony Music. And so I worked with artists to make them look and sound really good on platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, etc. And so I applied those techniques to working with podcasters, creators, right? Because musicians are content creators, right? And so it's applying that to that. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that people are making fantastic albums in their garage, in their bedrooms, and really becoming great. Now, do I recommend you go into a professional studio and do that stuff? Absolutely, because you're going to sound even better and have producers that really know the intricacies of things like compression and the like. But you can make something, and you can make a podcast with relatively inexpensive gear. And the gear that I use and I can talk about is not something that I started with. And I would never recommend, to Neil's earlier point, I would never recommend someone start with this gear. So don't think that if you want to be a podcaster, the first thing you got to do is buy this microphone, which is the Shure SM7B, plugged through a Cloudlifter CL1 that goes into a Rodecaster Pro 2, that's my main chain for audio. That all of that gear together is probably $1,200, something like that. And when you see that and you're like, oh God, I'm never going to sound like this because I don't have $1,200 to spend. All you need is about the price of an Xbox, which you probably bought maybe for your kid already or for yourself. And it's just about getting a proper dynamic mic. And maybe sometimes you just got to plug it into your computer with a USB. It also has an XLR, so then you can graduate to getting an interface, which has really good preamps. And there are affordable interfaces from companies like Focusrite. And you don't have to start with a Rodecaster Pro, because the Rodecaster Pro 2 is something for someone who understands how to do multiple inputs. Someone like Alec Johnson who can route things in and out of shows and audio. Like those are producer level things you need. So don't think, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. Look at the gear I got. Look at here. What we want to talk about first is who you're serving, who your audience is, and what you're going to deliver on your show to keep them watching and to serve them and have them get better. And for us on Dealcasters, a lot of what we do is remote production. And so it allowed us to do this show live and solve these people's problems that have tech issues, that have virtual presentation issues, like what camera should I use? What's the lighting that you use? And so we brought it down and we said, let's start here simple. Let's ask this person where they're at in their journey. Let's ask them what their budget is, and let's get them going. And the thing that we loved about ending the show is that we would get people going, I'm starting my podcast tomorrow. I bought 2 pairs of headphones because I want to see which one is more comfortable, because we would have that conversation too. Like a lot of people, they don't like stuff stuck in their ears, they don't like in-ear monitors, and other people, they don't want the big cans on their head. And the people that do want cans, like comfort is an issue. And realize, like, if you buy certain types of headphones, they put extra bass in there. So when you're editing your show, it's going to sound really super paper thin because you need monitors on your ears. Like we know this stuff because we have this curse of knowledge. But if we can get on the biggest mall of the world and share that information, we're giving it away. And, because Amazon has this creator program where they give you commission, it just sort of like, this is the place where we can go, we can scale, we can monetize, we can turn this into revenue streams for ourselves as creators, in addition to being remote producers where we serve our clients.
Definitely. I when people come to me and they ask questions around what gear should I get, and my first question to them is, well, like to your point, Chris, what are you trying to do? Who are you trying to serve? What is the purpose of your show in the first place? If you simply want to, create a show where it's just audio only, you're not bothered about being on camera, then yeah, I'll recommend certain things to you. But like you said, you don't have to spend $1,000 on audio equipment just to start a podcast. People these days, we've said it before, they can just use their phone. If they just want to record a voice memo, throw that out there to start with. Just see how you feel. See if you can get an audience. See if you can find somebody that you're having a message that resonates. And I think, we've said this before, content is king and the rest is secondary. Let's make sure that you have the content out there first and have an idea. So anyway, well, thank you for sharing what you have. And the camera, I know you've mentioned it is a Sony camera, but what specific camera is it?
Yeah,
for those camera nerds
it's a Sony
out there?
A6. Yeah, it's a Sony A6100. So it's not even,
cool.
I mean, listen, when you there are a lot of people that are like, oh, the A7 II and the, all of that stuff, and it does 4K and all of that. It's like, no, let me just get the A6100. Let me get the Sigma lens, and let me get a teleprompter in front of me, which is the Glide Gear. It's not the Elgato.
Right.
Works for me. Yeah, works fine for me. It allows me to, have eye contact with you guys, and and it really is altogether not a super expensive setup. Would I like to get, a better camera? Sure. Do I need it? No, I absolutely don't. And I feel like, to your point earlier, Neil, it's about working on your content, and whatever gets you moving forward and creating is what's going to work. And sometimes it's like, all I have is a laptop. I'm struggling with my bills. Okay, cool. Let's get you into a dead room where you can, where you don't sound like you're in an echo chamber, right? Let you, if you have a phone, to your point, I mean, these phones are better cameras in a lot of cases than, you'd spend, whatever, $1,000 on. I mean, you can really get some great, we're big fans of the Reincubate Camo software, where you just basically hold up your phone and scan in a QR code, and all of a sudden you're in 4K on a camera. Just set it up somewhere where it's eye level. You're not pointed up at the nostrils, and get yourself framed right. Like, these are all things that I think people just need to be told. Like, this is why a lot of times, like, when we go live on Amazon, we talk about this stuff. Like, get yourself in the frame, right. And framing is in lighting, and simple lighting, not expensive lighting, is as important as anything as well. And those are things like, once you get someone confident, like, hey, wow, they gave me these tips. Now I'm centered. Now I don't look like I'm in the witness protection program. Now I sound clear. I don't have that click going on. I don't have an echo going on. These are things that make me feel more confident. Now I can create content. And then eventually you start to learn things from guys like Martin McKenna and Neil Furman, and you go, okay, these guys are talking about this and talking about this. I can apply these techniques. Now I have a little budget. Now I can invest in a little bit more, because I'm watching Doc Rock, or I'm watching some of these people that are giving me these techniques, not necessarily gear acquisition syndrome, but some affordable options. And that's kind of what Dealcasters is about, is like, listen, I don't suggest that you get the Shure SM7B. And I'm sorry, Mario and Laura, if you're listening and watching, but sometimes, the better option is something that's more affordable. And that may be the MV7 Plus, or it may be something that is more in the $60 range. There's some really great microphones. The Samson QTU, I continue to purchase and send out to clients. The Audio-Technica 2100, these are great mics. I just sent a Shure SM58 to a client to improve their sound. And this is the classic microphone you see everybody using, right? It's $80. And you could, like, throw it out your window and have it smash, into a car going by, and go out, walk, and grab it, pop it into an XLR cable, and still use it. It's a great mic.
It's robust. Before we get into other questions from Martin, I know you've got some questions to ask. There's a lot of love in the room for you. So I'm just going to pop up a few comments here. Tons of comments, actually. First of all, we've got Shannon Hernandez. Chris, you shine regardless. There you go. And Saeed is in the room. Thanks, Saeed, for joining us. We were talking about microphones before, and Saeed says, people talking into the wrong side of their $400 mic. That never happens, right?
Oh,
there you go. Wow. The wrong side of the mic, but that's that can happen. That can happen. And
Saeed, great show he did with y'all. He's a great creator, and it reminds me of every time you see somebody using a Blue Yeti microphone. No, I'm not going to throw any shade on the Blue Yeti. Okay, just so you know, I wouldn't recommend that if you're starting out. But some people have made it sound great. But when you see somebody speaking into the top of a Blue Yeti, it's like, I just want to. I start tweaking out. It's like, listen, that's not like, you're supposed to speak into the side of it.
They just need a hug. They just need a hug.
We need a hug.
We have a quick question from Shannon as well. It says, when you remote produce, you deal with your own tech issues such as spotty internet. How do you manage? How does that manage for your final product? So I guess it's sort of, do you have any backups, things to mitigate any internet issues and stuff like that? It's a good question.
Yeah. So when guests are coming on and they have spotty internet issues, what I've learned is that, it kind of goes back to your original point, Neil, is that your content is the ultimate, it is what's important. And so when we do a show, we do a sound check beforehand. And before even the sound check, we send everybody a sheet. And fortunately, not everybody reads it. So we also send a video link. And the video is an unlisted YouTube link that kind of walks you through it, in a few minutes, how to do things like check your speed. Make sure you reboot your computer a couple hours before you go live. Check this, all of these things that, people might not understand how to do that. Now, most of the time, guys like you aren't sending me that sheet because you understand I kind of know where the bodies are hidden in terms of audio and video, but we send that ahead of time. And so they know there's a couple of things. Number one, I got to get my act together. This is a real show. And number two, they may not be ready to do that. And if they don't have the proper upload speed, right, then it's like, so we have them send us a screenshot, things like that. It's a little extra, right? And if I don't get the screenshot, I'll touch base with them and just kind of make sure that you're comfortable with it. The conversation most everybody has is, well, it works on Zoom. Well, we're not using Zoom for the production, so it's different, right? And so you have to have those types of conversations. But during the show, and Shannon, maybe more specific to your question, when we're in the sound check, right, and everybody's checking their mic, and I just have come to the conclusion that the most important part of a sound check is to make the guests comfortable. And part of the reason is like, if you're having them do too much and they're frustrated with their computer, and it's like, you just have to get to a point where you can get the plane going and have the plane take off, right? Like, let's just make sure they don't look like they're in the witness protection program. Let's not make them feel uncomfortable before they go live, because if they're uncomfortable and they're like, God, that was so frustrating. I mean, I spent 14 minutes trying to figure out how to hook up my mic and how to make sure my camera, he had me lining up and he had me do all this other stuff. And by the time you go live, that person is frustrated and the show is going to suck. And they're not going to deliver the content that's important for your host, that's important for your guest. And so my most important thing is to make sure everybody's good enough to move on, right? And using that GETMO acronym that Craig Rochelle uses is like, let's get everybody good enough to get the plane up, and we can work on this other stuff, before we land the plane. But the most important thing is to make sure people feel comfortable and that you can hear and see them clearly. I'm not sure. Does that answer everybody's question? I mean, I maybe took it in another direction with the plane analogy,
Carry on as many analogies as you like. I like those.
Okay.
I've got you must start, talking of planes, at ground level with some of your potential clients.
Yeah.
So you might have seen some, they turn on the camera and they turn up and you think, oh, this is going to be a challenge. What is your biggest transformation and success with a client, and what did you do for them?
Oh, wow. Excellent. So, by the way, great research, gentlemen. I know, when I do a podcast and I have a guest, I always want to ask questions that they've never been asked. And this is one of them. So thank you for that. So one of the shows that I produce is actually a regional show that's based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and it's called Lancaster Connects. And these guys are mattress store owners. And so they're based in this really thriving, creative community in central Pennsylvania. And they have this show that they want to do out of their store. And they really couldn't figure out how they were in an area of their store, and they were talking about Lancaster, and they were things weren't great with their producer, and they were just like, they had to find a new way to take their show to the next level. And so the conversations that we had were like, first and foremost, what do you guys want to do? Like, and I think a lot of people, before they buy the microphones and the cameras and where they're located, how long should the show be? What should we do? You have to really just go all the way back and say, who are we doing this for, right? What do we want to do here? Who do we want to serve? And what does these key performance indicators, what do these look like for us? Is it, do you want to achieve a ton of downloads? I'm not sure that's really a great, reason why, because if you're wanting to achieve a bunch of downloads, what are you going to do with it? Are you doing that so you can get more sponsorships? Are you doing that so you can get more money? Okay, well, let's settle in for the long ride, because something like this is not going to make a ton of money. So you have to understand, like, why am I doing it? And for them, this was a way for them to develop a community that can serve nonprofits and charity organizations in the central Pennsylvania area, because they had this heart for that. And what they wanted was an interactive show where they could talk to people, create a network of people, and be sort of the point of contact for the central Pennsylvania area for nonprofits, charity, for giving back, for that kind of stuff. So we developed this live show. We had these guests come in to the mattress store, by the way. So it's in Gardner's Mattress and More in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But the only reason why you would know that is because they're sitting in the store in this little studio, and behind them are some mattresses and people shopping, and every once in a while there's some noise that comes in, which is great. It's like people understand, okay, these guys are mattress store owners, but we're here talking to off the streets, which helps with the homeless people and getting them, into housing and things like that. And so I would say an achievement, to answer your question more specifically, Martin, was that they achieved 100 shows. And their guest on their 100th episode was the lead singer of the 80s hair band Poison, Bret Michaels.
Wow.
Because he's from central Pennsylvania, and he recognized this show. He had some shows coming up with his party gras, kind of thing. Loved the concept of the show, loved that they were giving back to the community, and was on the show as their 100th episode. So like, they were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're this, independent mattress store in central Pennsylvania, and we're having a conversation with, he's a star, right? And really it applied. And so that they've grown their community. So when we go live, they have these super fans that chime in. And where do you think people buy their mattresses in central Pennsylvania? They go to Gardner's, because they have that extra thing that you don't get when you're buying a mattress on Amazon that's delivered to your door.
Fantastic. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool.
Yeah, of course.
I wasn't expecting that answer.
Nope.
That was terrific.
Good. I like to be unexpected.
Yeah. So Neil, if we only had a way of interacting with our users, via some sort of tool.
There you go. Well, that's a nice lead in, because I
was
was just about to
segue.
do that. Oh, it's a segue. Martin's great at segues. I'm hoping this will pop up, because, I've had a few problems with it before. We are going to go, because this is a podcast show, we're going to go to Stream Alive. And we are going to ask the audience, do you currently create a podcast? It's a simple question. 1 for yes, 2 for no. Pop it in the YouTube chat or any chat that you're in, and let's see if those comments come through. I'm going to pop it in here. Let's see what happens if it comes in there. So we've got some people popping in. Oh, there we go. Pop it in, people. If you have a podcast. Nobody says no at the moment. Oh, somebody says no. Okay, 33% says no. Look at that. That's Martin. That's Martin saying no. Anybody else that would like to comment? I know we're 15 seconds behind with YouTube, so people are coming in now. Valerie's said yes. All right. Keep those results coming in. There's quite a few people actually saying yes. So it's, Saeed says no. It's a 50-50. Oh, so exciting. It's like the Oscars. What's coming up next?
What's crazy? While these answers are coming in, Neil, this makes me think about how people define what a podcast is. So when you actually say, do you currently create a podcast? Right? Some people think, well, I post videos of conversations that I have with person X, and we call it this, and we put the video up on YouTube.
Right.
Is that a podcast? I think that's a whole nother show, to be honest, to talk about the definition of a podcast. But I mean, I'm curious, because a lot of people, especially people younger than us, and I don't want to age anyone inappropriately, but I know when it comes to my kids, who are no longer kids, what they define as a podcast, and then people
Right.
that are 10 years younger than them, what they define as a podcast
Yeah.
is different. So when you ask someone, hey, did you listen to that podcast, or and you hear the words, did you watch that
Right.
podcast? For someone like us, it's sort of like, ooh, like it stands out like, oh, she said this, and it's not really a podcast. And in the end, personally, I don't think it matters.
No.
I think the entire base of humanity will decide, really what a podcast is, and people will talk about YouTube and, being in podcasts. And I think a lot of people are kind of not fighting it, but are like, is that really a podcast? Because it doesn't have an RSS feed and those kinds of
Yeah.
things. I think in the end, it's all going to just, the humanity will decide what a podcast is. But I'd be curious what people think is or isn't a podcast.
Definitely. Well, I have one last question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Martin. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, following on from that,
Mm-hmm.
I think one good question would be, what makes the difference between a podcast and a video podcast? In a video podcast, do you have to do, for instance, what we're doing here, which is putting on a show, as far as I'm concerned? It's not just you and I talking to one another, next to one another for the whole 60 minutes or whatever it is going to be. We're actually moving between different scenes and bringing up different interactions. And for me, it's Creator Cafe show rather than podcast. I'm not quite sure how you define those or the differences between the two.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great way of putting it. And I think if you define it as a show, and then you take that show and you create content from it, whether it's video or primarily audio or only audio or whatever, however you're doing it, then, you could call it a podcast, you can call it a show. What you're calling it is really inconsequential. For me, I think when we do a live show, we want to put it in and tuck it in as many places as the person you want to serve can consume it. And so when we create a live show, so for instance, Dealcasters, what we try to do is we try to audibly describe as much as possible without sounding like it's weird if you're watching. And so that allows us to take the content and strip out the audio, pull out maybe the intro part and maybe some other stuff, and put it out in audio, because an audio podcast can be consumed. It's much more intimate, right? And so it's a commute with the person you're serving, or it's a walk with their dog, or they're on a run, or they're at the gym, or maybe they're just in a more, they just want to hear it, like they're sweeping, vacuuming their homes or whatever, however they consume an audio only podcast. If your audio is talking about, oh, look over here, oh, ha, 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 look at this, and oh, look at that, and somebody's only listening to it, they're gone. And so we try to frame the run of show for Dealcasters, but also the creators that we work with as well, in terms of, hey, let's try to make sure that you understand there are people that are just going to be listening to this too, and they may have the video on, and they might be just listening to it as well. And so I think that may cause someone to look, at times, but they may not always be watching the show, even though they're hitting play on YouTube, if that makes sense. But I like the way you're thinking, Martin, is like, does it matter? It's a show, right? We don't have to call it a podcast. Somebody else might. That's fine. But I always look at it like this: is like, if you ask somebody what their favorite album is, they're going to tell you what their favorite album is. Like, what's your favorite AC/DC album? Oh, it's Back in Black. They don't say, what's your favorite AC/DC album? And the answer is Back in Black album. It's like, it doesn't matter. You just, right. It is the show. And so, I like the way you think there.
I think, obviously, we have come from a certain age where when podcasts first started, and the whole definition of podcast is one particular thing, as you mentioned, to our generation. And I think when people think about podcast or hear the term podcast, it invariably strikes an image of it's an audio accompaniment. It's an audio file of some kind that people can consume on the go. They don't have to physically be in front of a screen and watching things. And times have changed. There's been so many video-centric podcasts out there now that is a conversation like we're having today, which could technically be repurposed now into a podcast. I could take the audio from this and then make a podcast into that, and taking out the pieces that are visually represented by what we're actually doing on this show right now. So I think for me, I think the term podcast is never going to go away, but I think the lines are blurred now between what that actually means for certain people, and in terms of, well, what does a podcast look like for you now? And for me, I've always tried to sort of be in the realm of doing an audio-centric podcast and make it something that people can consume on the go without having to watch anything. But more often than not now, with YouTube now showing your podcast as a separate feed, but that could be audio and video. I guess, yeah, I think everything's just going to be the same. As Martin said, it's just going to be a show, and whether tag it with the name podcast or not, I don't think it really matters anymore. I think it's just going to be a show. There's a couple of questions coming for you as well, for both of you, actually.
Awesome.
So let me ask the question, first of all, to Chris from Shannon. And Shannon asks, in terms of marketing, do you have any strategies to drive people to your video podcast? What are your promotional strategies? Secret sauce time now, I think, Chris. So, what's the...
Well, Shannon, you're going to have to pay for my course.
There you go. Yeah, and affiliate link down below in the description. So right, just click here.
Exactly. Yeah, I think having so many people as creators that are creating podcast content lose sight of who they're serving. And I'm sorry, I keep going back and I keep harping on this, but there's shiny objects flying around. I got to be on TikTok. I got to be on Blue Sky. I got to promote it on Threads. I got to, it's YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, right? And these are things that keep you from creating and keep you from serving your audience. And so I can't stress enough to surround yourself. And I know this isn't a marketing technique hack. Surround yourself with people that won't tell you what you want to hear, but will tell you what you need to hear to make yourself better. And I know Shannon, he's a fantastic creator, and I know he surrounds himself, he's in the broadcast industry, he's in the podcast industry, he's got his foot in two different places. But you surround yourself with people like Jeff C. I surround myself with Jim Fuse. You two probably work together. I mean, you put together a fantastic show. But if you're just, blowing smoke up each other's backside all the time and telling each other how awesome you are, you're not getting better unless you're actually going, hey, we need to do this better. We need to do this better. Let's find people in our audience that will tell us something that we can do to make our show better. And that will fuel your marketing. That will go, you know what? I don't have to put out 100 TikToks a month. I don't have to do a creator sprint on Blue Sky. I don't have to, you just have to have, I suggest for a podcast to have its own website. I think it gets confusing for people. If you have, like myself, I'm a remote producer and I have castahead.net, but my podcast is a separate website because I'm not so sure that the people that I serve are gonna, like you don't want to convolute things, right? You don't want to be in a situation where somebody goes to you, I'm not exactly sure who you are. You're the host of this. Oh, you're a podcaster. Well, no, actually I'm a remote producer, right? So those are kind of marketing mindsets, but I think as a creator, your podcast needs to be like, from a real estate perspective, you need to be on all of the things. You need to have a place so that nobody steals your handle, so to speak, right? So when you go to Dealcasters, you're not going to somebody who's selling caster wheels somewhere. It's you, right? So go and grab the handles on all the social media profiles. But that doesn't mean you have to. And then park some things there. But then another thing that we've done on Dealcasters, in order to determine where your audience is, because a lot of people, you don't know yet, right? If you're just starting on a podcast, you don't know yet where your audience, and you're asking them, right? But maybe you don't have that many people just yet. You're just kind of starting out. Is to take the content, make it appropriate for the platforms, right? Don't just take one piece of content and spit that into 15 different platforms, because that content may not be appropriate for that platform. Plus, when you get someone that is a listener or viewer of your particular podcast, they may want to follow you in all the places, and they can't get enough of Martin McKenna. Like, I want more of his stream profiles. Where can I follow him? Oh, he's got Instagram, he's got TikTok, he's got X, he's got Blue Sky, he's got YouTube, he's got it. And you go and you follow him on all these places. And what would happen if they followed you and everywhere that they went, it was the same thing? They would just go to the places that they wanted to be and maybe unsubscribe or just may not care. So I think as a podcaster, you need to understand, let me do my show the best way I could possibly do, right? Then start testing some of these platforms and see what works, where your audience is, where you're getting the engagement, not necessarily the views and subscribers, but where are people starting to resonate here? And then go down those platforms. Don't worry about forgetting about posting on a platform that is not getting any engagement yet. And we just had Katie Brinkley on Dealcasters. She kind of blew my mind here, because I expected her to tell me that you, as a podcaster, when you want to promote your show on social media, you need to go where your audience is. And she said, I don't think that way at all. And she said, I think if you don't like being on a platform, don't be on a platform. Like, if you don't like posting on TikTok, or if you don't like going on TikTok and scrolling through and seeing whatever, don't do it. You don't have to. You can, create a profile for yourself, maybe put up a few things so you're there, so nobody steals your handle or whatever. But if you don't like being on it, you don't have to post it. And maybe your audience is there, maybe they're probably, you just need to find them on these other platforms. I know it's a very long answer. I'm sorry, but these are the kind of things I'm passionate about, and I could blab forever about.
I think it's a very important thing you just mentioned, though, is that when you're starting off, I've been the victim of this myself. I'm going to post everywhere because I don't know where my audience is right now. So what you're trying to do is almost create that area for you where you can post wherever you want, just so you can get as many people to either like or subscribe. And it's not because people need the external validation. You're trying to find where your audience is, where is your tribe. And sometimes, and I've felt that it's just so painful to actually, now I need to post here. Now I need to format this video differently or whatever. And I'm going to have to post it on there, and it's the different aspect ratio or what sort of tags and things do I have to use and it's just too much. So I think that's excellent advice to only post on where you feel comfortable in posting. And as many people have said, if people like what you do and they find you, and they will find you because we have the biggest search engine in the world, which is Google, and it's tied to YouTube. If you start posting on there, then people are going to find that content for you. And if they want to see a written word or some of your musings on X or other places, then that's the type of content you should be posting. But I'm having a serious think for 2025 to do a platform rationalization. And I'm just going to post on 2 or 3 platforms, and that's it. And if people say, where did you go? You're not on this anymore. Well, it's too much work. I'm not finding the traction that I need, and there's too much effort. And you end up being everywhere. And it's just diluting your brand, and it just takes a lot of energy out of you that I think is too much. That's my feeling. So 2025 people, you'll see me on one platform, MySpace. That's where I'm going.
I think we have another MySpace. Yeah,
that's well put. No, Neil, I think that's well put. I do the same thing. Like, people have New Year's resolutions, right? I'm gonna, stop smoking, lose weight, stop drinking, or I really am going to start to learn how to do Blue Sky more, or whatever their. But I look at it as like, I have resolutions throughout the year. When the new year comes for me, I look to take away. What can I pull out? Well, let me go through all my subscriptions that I've got for all of these things that I thought I was going to do. and I'm paying $39 a month for this and I never use it. Cancel.
Right.
Like cancel, 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 cancel. And it is so freeing. It opens you up. It lets you focus more on these platforms you really like to create on. So that was a great point. Yeah.
Great. We have lots of comments as well. Go ahead, Martin. I'll just go through these comments.
I was going to say, right. While you're thinking about the comments, I think Chris has set himself up for a segue here because he's talked about repurposing content and different platforms, and I've been seeing a bunch of his vertical video posts on the Wild West, which is LinkedIn, and I'm interested to know how he has put those together, because I thought, is that Opus Clips? I don't think it looks better than Opus Clips for some reason. And
yeah,
I happen to know that Chris has already got something in the background here he can show us in a minute, but do you want to throw the comments in first?
Yeah, just a couple of questions and things.
To
Definitely. So there was a question for you as well, Martin, and the question was, does Martin have a Twitter account? Miss Eileen is trying to find you. I don't think you have, do you?
Oh, I do have. It's McKenna tweet, but I never tweet on it. So
there you go.
You're not going to find me. I've rationalised my platform. Somebody told me recently that was a good idea.
There you go. You can't find him. So there you go. Let's also look for, oh yeah, Valerie said, absolutely cool to test things out, play with what you want to play with. Absolutely. And, do what works for you, right? At the end of the day, not all platforms are going to suit everybody. And one last comment. Thanks, Shannon. I'm with you, Neil. See you in my top 9 on MySpace. 2025, we'll be there. All right. So, Chris, with that in mind and not trying to create content for MySpace, I think, as Martin said, you wanted to show us a little bit about some of the ways that you create your vertical content. If you're ready, you can give me the nod and I can switch it to full screen. Boom.
Yeah, there we go.
Is. Oh, look at that.
So
beautiful.
So if you go to my YouTube channel, which is at Cast Ahead, I go through this in more detail. And so, I'm getting a lot of comments like Martin has, is like, what are you doing? How are you able to do what you do in, in these social media, in these verticals? And we do these for Dealcasters. I do them for Cast Ahead for my own branding, but I also do this for clients, and this is Descript. And so if you, this looks incredibly boring right now, but trust me, this is a massively powerful program for creators. And everything starts here. So I've got all my clients down here on the left. But I have each of these folders, but I'm currently in the Dealcasters folder. And basically, what this allows you to do is, as a content creator, you can take your videos, and programs like Ecamm Live and others will allow you to, in your podcast interview, each individual video from your participants, it will create its own individual video. So like in this case, Martin, Neil, and I, if we were in Ecamm Live, which I believe we are, but you would then receive a recording, an individual recording of me, an individual recording of Neil, and an individual recording of Martin. And then we would take those recordings and we would pop them into Descript, drag them in. And what Descript does is it takes your recording and it asks you, do you want to create a sequence? And I've got this already set up as a vertical, but you can see, just like any DAW, it stacks these. It says, okay, you want it to be a sequence. This is actually an interview between 3 people. And so you can look at it from this perspective, where you've got Brandon here on the top. He's a layer. You got Jim Fuse, which is our second layer, and you've got myself as the third layer. And when you tell it it's a sequence, this is the most powerful part about it, is you can edit the actual transcript. And so going in, it will identify your speakers, whether it's Brandon, myself, or Jim, and you can go in and edit this as a particular, phrase or whatever. What the other thing that Descript allows you to do is they have this. Here, let me grab Pro Mouse, because that way I can focus a little bit more on this stuff really quickly. Here we go. There we go. And so it has what's called Underlord, and Underlord is the name that Descript gave their AI. But when you go to Underlord, you can tell it to create clips. And when you create clips, it grabs, depending on how you want it. So if you want the clips to be, 1 minute and 20 seconds, because that will work on any platform now in terms of vertical video. So you want to find one that works for TikTok, you can create a TikTok one. It'll work on TikTok. You want to find one that works for Instagram, it'll find one that works for that. And then when it spits out the clips, they end up looking, let me find one that hasn't been edited yet. They end up looking like this. And that looks fine. And it's got Brandon speaking and then I speak at the end. But you can do things like add captions to it. You can add a show name if you want. But the real power of this allows you to create scenes. And so this is kind of how I do it. Let me find a clip that I've already made. Yeah, so here's one that I've already made. Let me know if you guys can hear this when I hit play.
Trust yourself, which is consistency and like a commitment to the process.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, great.
I think trust comes from doing the work and looking back and say, yeah, I kept that promise. I did that work. And whether the result was great or not
So there's a lot going on there, right? And so the beauty of this is you can see these are scenes that are created here along the side. And the way I create scenes is I hit a slash key and it just creates another scene. So here is where Brandon says, what does he say here? And at 6. So right here, there's a slash key. It created and at 6 months. So if I hit play, you'll hear him say.
And at 6 months, I can make a rational business decision.
And then it switches to another scene.
Did this work? Do I have the listeners on?
That was just something where I hit slash and I created something else. Descript has stock video that you can pull in. There's other spots where I created Brandon as a green screen function and pulled in some of his B-roll from one of his videos that's on his website. And this is a green screen function. If you can see, if I click on him and I go to green screen and I uncheck, this is behind my head, sorry. But this is what it looked like originally. So if I click on this and I go to green screen and I check it, it does this. Now, it does it quickly now because I've already done this. I've already run this function. This is an internet, it takes a minute for this to do the green screen function. Things like studio sound, which takes a Zoom call and makes it sound, more like a podcast. Adobe has that sort of functionality as well. So if somebody doesn't have great sounding audio, you can make it sound, good enough, I suppose. But the one thing you'll notice that I do on a lot of these scenes, you have the ability to add each member of the scene. Oh boy, that's not a good shot of Jim. Sorry, Jim, your eyes aren't open.
Thank you for that later.
Yes, exactly. So you could do all kinds of custom. You could do your custom font here. So if you want to, you could upload a custom font, upload any font that you want, and incorporate it here, and then do all of the custom things to it. Brand it with the particular thing. You have things like lines that you can add that make it look like it's a.
I think trust comes
sound
from
that's coming in, so it looks like it's a podcast. You could do what Jeff C does on his using Descript is like a timeline along the bottom that lets you know how long the video is going, and sometimes that helps people know. Okay, is this how long is this video? Like, am I going to be spending a minute here? I'm going to be spending 5 minutes, whatever. He uses that along the. It is a massively powerful program that allows you to do things like pulling in B-roll, doing all that kind of stuff. And I think programs that I haven't seen one yet that's come out to where you can just drag something in and AI will magically pull all this stuff in there. But what I'm trying to do is to create something that stands apart. And I think Neil, you and I spoke about probably off camera beforehand. I think when you're serving somebody like a particular client that's paying you for something like this, spending $30 a month for a program that's just going to give you stuff that's okay and maybe works versus doing something that's on brand for them, that allows you to pull in, key logos, at times, B-roll that's specific to that. It's that extra stuff that really sort of resonates, not just with, the clients that you serve, but, people you can tell a story really in a minute. And whereas opposed to just taking what a program's giving you and saying, well, I probably would have said this a little different, or would have added something. Why did they cut that person off at that point? And so, for me, Descript is an absolute powerful engine for me to start there. And usually when I get something out of Descript, I then pull it into Final Cut, and add a little sauce to it, because I like the transitions better, where I have a little more control over it. Music, graphics, things like that I can fly in over. Descript is not there yet, to be honest. I don't love, I don't work for Descript, so I can speak freely about all of this stuff. But it's a massively great thing. But I think I still need that extra ability to pull in music that syncs with the video, and transitions, and sometimes I need to fly in some graphics over top of it, just to give it that extra storytelling aspect.
I'm with you 100%. I've had a love-hate relationship with this script for probably about 2 years now, and there was a time when I was this far from saying I'm done, because it was, it was clunky, it was buggy. They've made tons of improvements recently. I'm using more of the web UI version of Descript now, because it seems to work
Really?
quite well. There's the app that you're just showing there, but there's also a web component now. It does 99% of pretty much what the actual application does for you, but it's still pretty cool. And I'm the same as you. I'll pull something into Final Cut. I've been using Final Cut since year dot, and it's great for giving you that extra sort of bits and pieces. I was really hoping that the latest version of Final Cut would have had the transcription feature, which would have meant I probably won't use Descript as much now, but obviously no. So you still have to use these tools to get you where you need to go. And I'm a big believer in making sure that you find the right tool to do the job. And there's not one tool that's going to do everything. You will need 1, 2, or maybe 3 tools to just get you to do whatever you need to do. But anyway, very good.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important to realize that you're right. Like, you can't find a Swiss Army knife that's going to get you all the way home. And I also think it's important that as creators, you have to invest your own, not just time in doing this stuff, but a little of your money, and get off the free plans, and use your free trials to understand, like, okay, this is going to work for me. But understand, like, and the amount of money that I pay for Descript is not a lot, but it is massively worth it for me, because I'm in it every single day, and it's great, but it's not like perfect. It's okay. It's just like AI in general. It's like, I can't just use ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is fantastic, but I have to use me, right? My own voice, to take it home. But also there's some other things that I can use in addition to ChatGPT. And so that's why I think it's important, that you find a few things, but make sure you get it over the line, right? Get it good enough to move on. Don't spend too much time tweaking it and pecking at it and doing all the other stuff, because the only way to get better is to consistently do it and get 1% better every single time. I think if we're going to look at our old content, we're probably all going to cringe, and that's okay. It's like, sometimes it takes 50 episodes to get to where you're at, or it takes 100 episodes to get where you envision yourself. But you don't get to episode 50 at episode 2. You got to get through the first 49 to get to that point. And it's important for people to realize, when they're using this stuff, when they're using Descript, is it for me? Can I do this? Okay, cool. But I'm not going to get, this high level kind of stuff just yet, but I can work towards it, and I can get better if I continue to crank out this stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think what I particularly like about that is that, and I pay a lot of attention to branding and fonts and things like that. And the way that you've got that looks great. Whereas a whole bunch of these more automated AI tools spit out some giant comic book font across the middle of the screen and in neon colours, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
no, I don't want that. Don't do that, please.
Right,
No.
right.
So,
Is there anybody
Yeah,
here
it's
who's
true.
been
It's
accused
like-
of doing that before? I'll just point to that person who's actually done some
Oh.
of that before as
Oh,
well. So,
nice,
there
nice. Look
go.
at
What
you
can
with
I
the
do?
with
What
the
can I do?
whiteboard.
There
I
you
love
go.
that. Yeah, it's true, Martin. It's imperative that you don't be like everybody else, and that might mean you don't put out as much, right? Don't. It's like checking the box is one thing, but I think, to your point, it's like, hey, Alex Hormozy's font's been taken, ladies and gentlemen. That worked, right? Success leaves clues, but you can't make a Xerox copy of a fax copy of a written napkin of Alex Hormozy's font and expect that to work for you. You have to carve your own path in a lot of ways. And Martin, the stuff that you do with stream profiles and that kind of stuff, there's a distinct style, there's a distinct spirit of excellence that is noticeable, and it's different. And for me, when somebody says to me, it's different, I consider that a huge compliment. And so I think it's important that we take time to create something that is for someone else that's excellent and is also different. So
Definitely. There's a question I think one of you may be able to answer. Comes from David. He said, months ago, I saw someone from the Ecamm farm showing a template for consistently sizing, framing a person on the screen. It had a proper name to it. Any idea where I can find it? Is that the one you're talking about, I think, where if you've got Chris here, for example, there would be like an overlay. I'm just going to draw in a second. It would look something like this. There would be like an overlay, yes, like this for Chris, and it would basically be saying he has to stay in that area now for the frame, and he's not.
I feel like I'm a person that's been murdered, and you're
exactly.
drawing a chalk line.
So there was a problem here, and this is when we find it. No, anyway,
he's never going to stay in there.
I think that's what you're referring to. There was Katie Fawkes from Ecamm posted it somewhere. I have a copy of it as well. If that's the one that you're referring to, David, I can hook you up with a copy. I've made one on Canva, and it's just a sort of transparent overlay that keeps you in the frame. And it's just basically applying the rule of thirds from camera speak just to make sure that you're perfectly centered at eye level and so on. So I will find that for you and send it over to you, David.
Oh, I'd love a copy of that as well.
All right.
That's a great idea.
I think it's actually one of my overlays here, actually. Have I got it? Probably not. See, when people say, have you got it? Another time. I'll find it. Another time. Martin, did you want to quickly maybe show your little vertical thing before we close up? Because we're just over the hour. If you've got 5-10 minutes left before we close up.
Absolutely.
Well, I think probably what we can do, actually, we had a little vertical scene set up, and we were going to talk a bit about vertical and whether it's going to be a big hit on LinkedIn and why people should or should not be doing it and things like that. So I might still like to ask those questions. But I did have a scene set up. But now I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking that big announcement, people. Myself and Neil in the new year are going to do a show which is in vertical only. Okay, you heard it here first. So I don't think I've really seen other people doing something equivalent of what we've got here, but purely in vertical. So we want to try doing that. And I think maybe we'll get Chris back on again, because we were meant to talk about Amazon Live and all sorts of other stuff, and we didn't get that far because it was far too interesting.
Because I blabbed, sorry.
No, it's far too interesting with other stuff. And that's the thing. But you see, this is not repurposing content, it's creating new content by just bringing you back. So if you would like to come back next year, we'd love to have you back on the show.
Would love it.
And we can talk all about Amazon Live selling, because that's a big component of what you do as well. And lots of people are really interested in that. I don't know if that's going to be bigger in 2025, but I'm sure lots more people are being able to get on the Amazon program. So yeah, that would be great. I think that's probably a good idea.
Would love
I
it.
do have one question. All right, this is leaping straight into the Amazon Live side of things, because I actually found it difficult to find any video, and I'm on Amazon all the time. I bet everybody got their Christmas present from Amazon. I never leave the house, but I hardly found any video, and I didn't see any vertical video on Amazon Live when I did eventually find it. Is there any vertical video on Amazon Live?
There is. You have the ability to go live on Amazon in vertical format. You can absolutely do that. It's, to go live on Amazon, it's RTMP. And if you're using Ecamm, they have an integration there, which allows us to pull in the chat. And so that's incredibly helpful for us. You can go live in vertical format. And a lot of product videos you can make, call it TikTok style product videos. And they have if you submit your product videos to them in vertical format, they will, according to them, take those videos and, bless them and add them to their vertical shopping format. And the name escapes me right now, which tells you how much we're focused on doing vertical video it's called Inspire. And so if your Amazon app allows, and I'm not sure if it's different in Amazon UK or if that's even available or if it's US only, I don't know. But every once in a while we'll see a spike in purchases for a particular product. For product videos that we do, like maybe Shure MV7 Plus, we submitted a video, and all of a sudden we'll see, oh wow, a bunch of people bought the MV7 Plus in this time frame, and we could sort of attribute it. Maybe we don't get that data from Amazon that says X amount of MV7s were sold because of this video. So we don't know if it had to do with the vertical video versus the landscape or wide video. So as an Amazon creator, it's a lot of, hey, we're creating this product video, we're throwing it over the fence, and we're hoping that Amazon, blesses it and puts it in the, on the product page. In terms of you seeing video in general on the platform, over the last year, they have stripped a lot of those opportunities and features for Amazon creators and influencers. So you used to see it all the time where you would go and you'd open up Amazon, and every single time you were clicking on a product, for the most part, at least top charting products, you'd see a creator doing a live video somewhere on the page. And that was way more impactful for us and for other Amazon creators that were on that platform, because we were seeing that coming into our actual live video. We were seeing the numbers, especially on Prime Day. You would see, thousands, maybe even 10,000 or more people watching a show while you're talking about a microphone that they may be shopping for that's on sale on Prime. That has pretty much gone away. Every once in a while, we'll see another creator will say it, or we'll see a spike, and we're not sure if, we squeezed one past the goalie there or something, or how that works. We're really, we're not privy to how they do that. So the amount of time that we spend really analyzing what we're doing on Amazon has definitely waned, just because I would say the program in and of itself seems to be somewhat in flux. And so we continue to, when we go live, Amazon is one of the channels we go live on for sure, especially on product related videos. But Jim and I never did Amazon to make money. It was never our intent when we went live on Amazon as Amazon influencers. It was never our intent to make money. It was our intent was to demonstrate what we do as remote producers and have a podcast where we can interview people and repurpose all of that content into a show, which is what we do. And so that was our way to do that, to specifically demonstrate what we were doing for our clients. And then when we opened our account one day and we saw all the money that came in, we were like, okay, maybe we should be focusing a little bit more on this than we thought. And we became the Amazon guys. And that was never really, we're not going to refuse anyone that says, hey, how do I do this on Amazon? How do I do this on Amazon? How do I go live? What are the requirements? And so we became, knowledgeable for that stuff. And then we spoke and had an entire day at PodFest talking specifically about that, working with people to get them signed up for the program. Amazon, we weren't paid by Amazon to do any of that, but we were like, hey, listen, let's get the content better here. There's money on the other side of that door. Let's get you there. And so we were doing all of that stuff. And then I think, there's lots of changes that happened on the platform. And now it's not something that we would say, hey, do this. It's super important because you're going to make a lot of money. I think it's important to do it if it applies on that platform. And because there is money, I mean, it is sort of found money while you sleep. It still is a fuel injected component of the Amazon Commission or Amazon Associates program. It's just not as much, to be quite honest. So I think it's something people should do, but not. I wouldn't say spend an inordinate amount of time, crafting your Amazon Live experience.
Good, wise words indeed. And I think Eileen has mentioned that Amazon Live is US only, so I don't think that's going to apply to us, poor European people. And I think Amazon Inspire is the same. But yeah, I think it's obviously it's big in the US. I'm not sure if it is going to come to Europe at some point, but I'd be interested to see if it does. All
Good
right.
stuff.
So it is 6:15 already. We've had Chris here for 1 hour and 50 minutes. Goodness me. And so much more to talk about. Well, Chris is more than welcome, and you heard it here. He will come back next year. We'll drag him back next year in January sometime. We'll work out some dates for that.
I might even take some hard questions, Neil.
Hard questions. Okay. You heard it, guys. So anybody who's got any hard questions for Chris, you can post them in the comments there. Hi, Gretchen. You've just joined us, and we're just about to finish, but you can catch us on the replay, hopefully. And
Hi, Gretchen.
I'll be in touch, David, as well, with that overlay for you. So, Chris, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Stick around with us for a couple of minutes on the
You bet.
on the Zoom. Yeah. And I'll just switch back to Martin and I. So thank you very much, Chris, and we'll see you on the next show.
Thanks,
Martin
guys.
and I will be back next week. What we're doing next week, Martin? What's the plan?
Next week, we're going to do a studio tour, and we're going to hope that there's still some Black Friday deals kicking around so that we can wander around our studios with our various different Osbot PTZ cameras or PTZs, and then tell you what gear we're using, and if any of it's on sale, then we'll let you know about that too. And I'll also be asking ChatGPT for the 10 most difficult questions for Chris Stone for the new year.
Exactly. We'll put Chris's details into ChatGPT and let it sort of fathom out some really hardcore questions for him. So,
really.
Yes, watch out, Chris. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for joining. It's a pleasure to see all your shining, beautiful comments in there. And we'll see you on the next show. Take it easy. Bye for now.